Alright, time to see what game the members chose for me to review this month. Oh no. Oh no. I know what this means. No!
Who's that guy?
That's Mike. He fights for the reviewers. Welcome to Mike's Gaming Gala. I'm Mike, and this week we're looking at Tron Anthology for the Intellivision, published by Intellivision Revolution. Tron Anthology comes in a professionally printed box, with a manual, overlays for all 4 games included, these neat Tron art cards, and hip hip hooray, a new injection molded cartridge. As I mentioned in my intro, this review was actually decided on by my channel members. Every month in the member section, we have a poll deciding on one game that I'll review in the following month. And in June, Tron Anthology won. Now, sadly, I wasn't able to get the ROM of this one. These days, I try to get the ROMs if I can, as it gives me the best video and puts the games in their best light. But the Intellivision gamer asked on my behalf, and the answer was no. Intellivision Revolution didn't want the ROM getting out, which is their right. Now, thankfully, Intelligentvision has all the games in this compilation for sale individually as digital copies. So for the 2 games that have voice, I spent the extra money and downloaded them so that I could show you that without static. One of these was also free to download, so only the main menu and deadly discs will be in RF for this review. You're welcome. Okay, let's take a look. After the splash screen, we come to a title menu that gives us the option to select our game. Like I said, Tron Anthology is a compilation cart of upgraded versions of the 3 original Tron games on Intellivision, as well as a 4th game that was only officially released on the Atari 2600, Adventures of Tron. There were plans for an Intellivision version, but it was ultimately cancelled and never got a release. The first game on this list is Adventures of Tron, so let's go on a Tron adventure. Pressing 1 on the number pad gets you into it. In Tron Adventure, you play as Tron, trying to capture all the bits in a never-ending series of stages full of enemies. The stages themselves are always the same, albeit with different enemy patterns. Let's talk about the playfield for a bit first. Each screen has 4 levels, with elevators on either side of them. In the center is a pole rising through gaps in each floor, and on every level there are 2 bits flying near the ceiling. You start at the bottom, and getting up to each level isn't quite as straightforward as you might think. You can't just use the same elevator to move up to the top straight away. Each elevator is a one-use only kind of deal. It'll only take you up 1 level. In order to reactivate the elevators, you have to cross the center point of the screen. When you do, the elevators move to show you that they're available again. Recognizers, tanks, and grid bugs dart across each of the levels and will be the bane of your existence. Thankfully, if you're in a bind, you can press down on the disc to drop down a level and get out of dodge. On the 3rd level, you'll see a pink solar sailor moving back and forth with the bits. If you time your jump properly, it can give you a ride. It might be just what you need to get over some enemies coming your way. The bits themselves can be a bit finicky with their hit detection, so make sure to time your jumps perfectly. Otherwise, you'll have to spend more time on each level, which can be very dangerous. This is a pretty unforgiving game at times, making you move all around the screen to avoid incoming enemies. Once you grab the 2 bits from each level of the playfield, a beam will appear in the center. Jump into this beam to get to the next stage and start all over again. Play to get the best score you can, but remember, at the end, MCP always wins, and it's end of line. Going back to the main menu, Game 2 is Deadly Discs, but this time, the discs are deadlier. Deadlier Discs is an upgrade to what I consider to be hands down the best Tron-themed game from the original Intellivision library, Tron Deadly Discs. In fact, it's among my favorite Intellivision games, period. Right away, you'll see that the colors have been changed from the standard bright environment to a dark black and blue one. Instantly, this gives a much better thematic feel. It also has a higher difficulty level, which definitely takes some getting used to. Unlike the original game, there are always 3 opponents on the screen. Every time you kill one, another one enters the playfield. It can be easy to get surrounded, and when you do, these guys are relentless and can just constantly hit you. To make things even more tricky, the discs now kill both when you throw them and when they return. Now, this is something that I've always wished for, but I'll be honest, I only ever wished it for me, not my opponents. These discs are indeed deadly. As you're fighting, knocking out the doors that the guys come in from jams them open. If you can open sections of the wall directly opposite from each other, these doors act as a single-use teleporter that you can use for quick evasion should you need it. At certain points, a recognizer will enter the screen and begin repairing the walls. If you can hit it directly in its white eye at the top from either directly above or the side before it freezes you with webbing, you'll fight it off and get big bonus points. That said, if the recognizer touches you, it's instant game over. Battle endlessly for points until, as always, MCP wins. Next up is Solar Sailor. Not gonna lie, I don't consider the original game to be great, but there's some quality of life improvements here that make it much more approachable. The original Solar Sailor was an Intellivoice game, and if you didn't read the manual, you were screwed. The goal here is to get to the center of the grid and battle the MCP. You do that by riding beams with your Solar Sailor and navigating to the right sector that will allow you to move inwards to the next track. To begin, press a number between 1 and 7 to choose what track you want to start on. Our first improvement from the source material. Thinking of the grid here as concentric circles, the outermost circle is track 7, and each circle moving towards the center is a lower track, moving from 7 to 6 to 5, all the way down to 1. Each track has 8 sections, numbered from 0 to 7, called sectors. You'll start the game with a starting sector and a goal sector. You need to get to the goal sector by moving either left or right until you find the beam that will advance you to the next track. Riding the beams is automatic, but you speed up or slow down with the action buttons. Each beam that you ride has an energy level that will be spoken to you, high, medium, or low. Traveling on each beam will drain its energy, so you have to transfer beams to make sure that you're traveling in a way that keeps you moving. If at any time the beam you are on runs out of power, it's game over. So, to transfer beams, press any number between 1 and 6 as you approach a junction. When you do that, your sailor will change color, and when you hit the intersection, it will move to the other beam. You'll notice that all beams have a set direction that they move in. This means that you'll have to navigate carefully to get to the section you're headed for. When you arrive at the proper section, the beam you need to take to advance you to the next track will turn white and you'll automatically take it, receiving new instructions as to what sector you need to get to. Unlike the original game, there's no access code needed here to advance tracks. And good riddance, a much better system. Now, of course, Solar Sailor doesn't let you just lounge around and enjoy the trip. You'll be attacked while you navigate the grid. The blue guys here are grid bugs. They're harmless, but the red guys here are tanks. They'll shoot at you, and every time you're hit, you'll lose some energy. The worst though, and I do mean the worst, the ultimate bane of my existence, are the recognizers. Especially as you get close to the center of the grid, these guys will come more and more often. If they touch you, they grab you and take you to another track. There is nothing more infuriating than constantly getting close to making it to MCP at the center just to be thrown back to track frickin' 5. Now, of course, you're not defenseless here. Using the disc, you can shoot at anything you like, defending your sailor from tanks and recognizers alike. Unfortunately, using this drains your energy as well, so be sparing with your shots. Also, I find that using the disc to do this can really lack precision, meaning that those recognizers, yeah, they quite often get me. Unfortunately, in my gameplay here, I didn't make it to MCP. But if you make it to the beam on track 1, you face off against MCP itself, and have to catch bits he throws at you and place them in proper order based on a 6-digit binary code. This is one of the games that you can actually beat, unlike the previous 2 options. I know that Solar Sailor is kind of a cult classic for a lot of people. All I can say is screw those guys. This is definitely better, but for average schmucks like me, it's just frustrating. Last but not least is another game that people often struggle with, Tron. Let's see what was done with this one. In Tron, you play as Tron, roaming the heart of the computer trying to find and disable the CPU. You do this over 2 phases by clearing RAM chips to 0 and then battling the CPU by matching bits. In phase 1, you have to clear the RAM chips, but before you do that, you'll have to find them and collect some items on the way. As you move through the maze, you'll come across several components that you can enter. These chips with the locks on them contain zeros. Yeah, zeros. You'll need to collect a lot of these as they're what will help you clear the RAM chips when you find them. Next are these transformers. Walking into one of these will pick up more shields for you to use. Your only defense against enemies in Tron is your shield. Recognizers roam the maze, and if they come for you, press and hold the button to activate your shield. This will disable them, allowing you to progress. You can also use your shield to pass through energy barriers. The maze auto-scrolls, forcing you to keep moving. However, walking into these chips with the arrows will change the direction of scrolling, allowing you some control of where you're headed. These large components are I/O transport chips, and surprise, surprise, they transport you. Depending on what difficulty level you're on, you have different odds of being placed at different sections of the circuit board, including the RAM chip bank. When you find the RAM chips, either by exploring or being transported, it's time to set all of these numbers to 0. The white numbers here switch back and forth between 1 and 0. Enter the chip when it's at 0 to lock the digit in place. If you enter it when it's a 1, then you'll have to use one of the zeros you collected to reset it. To change a black number from 1 to 0, press the fire button. As long as you have a 0 in stock, it'll change. To modify the left digit, enter the chip from the top, and to modify the right digit, enter the chip from the bottom. Once you have all the chips set to 0, you move on to battle the CPU. This one is super confusing at first. On either side of the screen are columns of yellow numbers. On the inside of those is 2 columns of white numbers. The outside columns are the ones that you have to use as your guide. Then, take your targeting reticle and shoot the numbers on the inside to match the order on each side. Or you can be like me and be surprised that you made it this far and panic, just shooting the first numbers that you see so that you instantly fail and get kicked back to the circuit board to try again. You get 3 tries at this, and if you fail the 3rd time, it's game over. New to this version is better odds on finding the RAM chips, IntelliVoice support, including the ability to hear how many zeros and shields you have with the press of buttons on the keypad, maze upgrades, and better controls. And that's Tron Anthology for the Intellivision. So what did I think? If you don't already have these games, this is a great way to get them all together. And even if you do, this really is the ultimate way to play them. The quality of life improvements included are great, and even just the recoloring of deadly discs makes it feel so much more like Tron. Now, if you don't like the originals, I don't think this will change your opinion on that. Despite the improvements, the core of these games is still the same. But this compilation, combined with the excellent presentation, like the art cards and overlays for each of the 4 included games, makes this, in my personal opinion, one of the best games published by Intellivision Revolution. If you can find it for sale, I highly recommend picking it up. But if you can't, definitely consider stopping by Intellivision.us to pick up the ROMs. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you liked it, and thank you so much to my channel members for picking this review for me. I hope it lived up to the hype. As always, my contact info is in the description, and we'll see you next time on Mike's Gaming Gala.